times in his rhymes cause his memories. We running through New York so you never leave. Strap my lungs then we puffin' through with that right. We're giving them some stories, they come back like manic this, manic that, why you crawling to me? The hell we
Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going over the BMW S85 Reliability 2020. Now this also applies for the S65, which is found in the M3 and the M5 engines. So as you know, the S65 is the V8 version on the M3 and the S85 is the V10 engine on the M5. So a lot of you guys always ask me all the times what fails on these, is the M5 reliable, and what to look for on buying these, and also is it a reliable engine that you guys think you should go and buy. So I'm just going to go over a certain amount of things that actually fail on these engines that can make these engines very expensive to maintain. So as a lot of you guys know, the M5 produces 504 bhp without the power button. It produces around 400 brake. Now to get the most power out of this engine, you've got to be taking it to the high RPMs, which you guys know is, you know, detrimental for the engine to get the most power, but also can kill the engine. So we're going to go over the first thing that fails on these and we'll explain why. So the first thing that fails on these guys is the rod bearings. Now you guys know why they fail. BMW calls a massive design flaw, and for this kind of performance engine you wouldn't believe this, but they do need changing. Luckily companies have come up with better design ones, race ones that you can put in there, and you won't ever have to do this again. But it does happen majority of the time, and usually majority of the time, because of the fault of that, it's usually due to lack of maintenance, people not changing the oil regularly, people not using the right oil, and people not letting the car warm up and just thrashing it at the moment from cold. That's usually the cause of failed rod bearings, because people don't let it warm up properly and don't let the oil get around the thin gaps of the rod bearings that BMW use. So as you guys know, it's very thin, and if you're using a thick oil at cold, it won't get around the rod bearings quick enough. That's why you've got to always use a thinner weight oil to make sure the oil gets through, so it can actually lubricate them bearings so you don't end up with them failing. And it's a big issue that a lot of people are having and killing their V10 engines and needing a full rebuild thanks to these rod bearings. Now the common rod bearings up here, guys, as you'll see, they cost about, well here, there's garages that do it for a set price of 2,300 to replace the rod bearings, and that's with all the parts included. Is it worth it? Not really for what you're going to get. Fair enough, it's a V10 engine, but I don't think the price is worth it for that car to have to keep replacing rod bearings, and then they go out again and then you're there again having to replace it again. The next one on these cars, guys, is the throttle actuators. Now these like to go out a lot on the M5. A lot of people would have suffered this issue. When these goes out, it'll put you in limp mode and you will probably have no power. If they do fail, what usually happens is that the cogs inside usually lose their grease and then they just stop turning and adjusting. You can buy rebuild kits for about £90. Do not be fooled. There's people on eBay trying to sell you them fully rebuilt for like £400, but it's not worth it. You can buy the rebuild kit yourself off eBay for 90 quid, as you'll see here, and it is worth doing it yourself. It doesn't take long. There is other videos out there telling you how to re-grease them, but I do not think that's a permanent fix, and I wouldn't feel safe myself doing it like that, because if they decide to seize up wire, for instance, on a highway, motorway, you're back to square one again. It's better to fully rebuild them, know you've done them first time and they'll last again for another load of years, where just re-greasing them is just a temporary fix. Many people go and do that and then find out it doesn't hold, because what happens is when you push down the accelerator, the computer tells the throttle actuators to open up so the cogs move, and it opens up all the throttle bodies. But what happens is when the grease wears down, they end up becoming stiff and they don't open anymore. So that's another reason why, if you are planning to get an M5 and you want to know if it's reliable, the throttle actuators can run you around £400. So be aware of that. But if you're planning to rebuild them yourself, it's not a hard job. They're about £90 for both sets to rebuild both throttle body actuators. So the next one, guys, on these, which is another common issue, is the Vanos solenoids. Now, what a lot of guys don't know about this engine is the Vanos solenoids don't usually fail on a V10, but let me assure you, there's 4 of them and they're charged at £180 each. That is very expensive for solenoids, for the M52, especially for me coming from M52. That's about the price for 2. Now there's 4 on them, but what usually happens is the seals inside them wear down due to heat, end up breaking up, and it causes you the timing not to advance properly. Now when the timing doesn't advance properly, that causes a loss of power, and that can also cause you to run hesitant, and also your idle to be all over the place as well. So I advise changing them. You can buy the seals very cheap and just replace them. You won't need to replace the Vanos solenoids. They don't usually fail on the V10, they really don't, so do not go replacing them. The next one on these guys, which is very critical, and BMW should have recall for this, is the oil ballast pump itself. Now, as you guys know, when you take the sump down to do the rod bearings, it sits right there. I would really and strongly recommend you check this. BMW did issue a recall. Any cars under 2006 were having it redone for free, a new one, and they were also resetting the pump system as well with the sump down. But if that's the case and you guys are under recall, you can go and check with your VIN if you can have this done for free, because they were failing, and as you guys know, causing the engines to blow up, where they weren't getting enough oil to the Vanos, and it was just blowing up the engine completely. This is another common issue on these cars that you guys have to be aware of, and if you have got the recall and BMW do issue it, I would advise asking BMW to do your rod bearings as well at the same time, because the labour will be very cheap labour, considering you're having that half done for free, which they'll probably do for you as well while they're taking the sump down. So I reckon it shouldn't be no more than probably about £300–400 to do it. That's with the parts, because BMW only charge about £200 for the rod bearings. The next one on these guys, as many of you guys know, is the oil line that sits in the sump as well, that goes to the oil pump of the Vanos unit, which can usually split, as you guys know, and if it splits, it will cause a load of oil to be leaking down, which can end up causing significant failure of the engine as well. You need to make sure that is not broken or leaking oil. You can check that with ISTA, so be aware of that you can check it with the program, and make sure that yours is not leaking, because if it is leaking, that will kill your engine also. There is a lot of parts on this engine that can end up destroying the V10 engine. Now, the V10 engine does sound really good. The V10 is a solid, reliable engine, and providing it's maintained correctly, you know, the V10 is a very solid and capable engine. Now, the next fault on these cars that usually go up, which a lot of people know as well, is their SMG pump and also the solenoids that sit on top of the gearbox, which you'll see right here. They do fail, and again, BMW made a revised item of number 2 for this, which they ended up revising because of the fact it kept failing so much due to heat. I think that was mostly in the US. They were going out a hell of a lot, and they were going out on the SMG1 when we used to have it here on the M3s. They were failing a hell of a lot, and they are still expensive. You're looking at about £500. I wouldn't recommend using a second-hand one at all, because you don't know if that's the number 2 version, and you also don't know how long that was on the car before it come off, and if it fails again, you're bound to square one. I know this company's rebuilding them as well, and I think a rebuilt one would be better than buying a second-hand one. I think a rebuilt one is about £800, and a second-hand one on eBay is probably about £400, but I'd strongly suggest going to buy a refurbished one because of that reason. Now, also, as you guys know, is the clutch. The clutch on these is very expensive. The clutch and flywheel, I found it for about £1,000 for the M5. Now, they like to fail, and as you guys know, the reason for failure on these is due to because it's got to be always at high RPM, and also a lot of people using the high gear ratio on them, which instead of the lower gear ratio. So the higher you put the gear ratio, the more the clutch is going to wear. Clutches do wear on these, and so do the flywheels. My personal experience and my dealings with always diesel, I recommend change the flywheel and the clutch all the time. You can sand the flywheel down and get away with reusing it again, but I would not recommend that. I would recommend just going and putting a new clutch and flywheel in and having it done. When you do the clutch and the flywheel, you guys probably know you need a special tool for it on the M5, which isn't expensive, and you can usually rent the tool as well, which you'll see up here. It's like a T little tool, which you're going to need to realign it. But after you put a new clutch in, you will need to recalibrate it with ISTA. A lot of you ain't aware of this. This car relies heavily on ISTA, on the program, to be able to maintain and be able to do everything on it. The clutch on them is not hard, but they do wear very quickly, every 50k normally, depending on the amount of high abuse it's had in. Like I say, depending on where you've got it from, how many owners it's had, you don't know how that car's been treated. You don't know when the clutch is going to fail. Is the clutch a major thing? No, it's not going to destroy the engine. So you can leave it until it goes and then just redo it. It's not going to destroy the engine, but the one thing is I do advise you guys to make sure you change, if you are looking to purchase an M5, to make it solidly reliable, is the rod bearings, the oil Vanos pump, and that oil line, to make sure everything's proper on that car. Throttle actuators are not going to cause the car to not start and blow up, and neither is the Vanos solenoids. All them things can easily be rectified on the car, and it will just going to put you in limp mode. It's not going to cause a failure to the engine. As I said, these cars are solid and reliable, the S85, and this goes for the S65 as well. The S65 suffers the same problems, and as I said, that'll be for the M3 and M5. They're both the same actual units, just one's a V8, one's a V10. Just make sure you look after these critical parts that are needed for this engine, and the engine will be a dream to own, and also super reliable. I've never heard of any other issues on this car, never. Just the rod bearings, oil pump, the SMG, the gearbox, just the normal wear and tear items. But you guys, if you're looking to buy one, you clearly know what you're doing. And secondly, you're looking to overhaul it clearly to be able to keep it, because you guys know they're high performance car. High performance car comes at high performance price. It's just the way it is. You get some people that do get them and don't understand the cost of running them, and then they realize it and then want to sell them. And that's why they go through a lot of owners. Even in the UK here, you can get some with 10, 12 owners at a time, just due to that, because people don't understand how high maintenance they are. And also in the UK with the M5 and M3s, parts are not so easy to source here as they are in the US. Most of the parts that we have to source it for M5 and M3 have to come strictly from the USA. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and I hope this has cleared up the S85 reliability video. As I said, it also applies for the S65. If it has helped you, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't. If you have got comments about this engine, please leave it in the box below. Thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.